I am Professor Antonio S. Marahas, and this is Digital Technique Fundamentals. Hello, let us start our discussion on this subject with the types of signal. Now, there are two types of signal. We have the analog signal and digital signal. So, analog signal is defined as a continuous signal. Okay? So, it is a continuous signal. So, an example of which is this one. No? So, we have here a voltage, for example, and this one here is your time. So, this one here is what we call an analog signal. Okay? So, if you notice that the analog signal continuously changes its value. Okay? So, that is why it is called continuous signal. No? The value varies as the signal goes up or down. No? So, that is your analog signal. So, for example, if you want to measure a value of an analog signal in this particular area, let's say, for example, approximately this is 25 volts, then you have to use a particular instrument, like for example, multi-tester or a other measuring devices, electronic or electrical measuring devices, no? To determine the value of an analog signal. Okay? So, like for example, oscilloscope, no? You can use that to measure the voltage of a particular analog signal. So, again, the value of your, or the signal here of your continuous or an analog signal is continuously changing. Okay? So, it varies every in every particular time, no? So, that's how the continuous or analog signal works. Unlike in your digital signal, for example, digital signal is defined as a discrete signal. Okay, so it's a discrete signal. Okay. So, an example of which is this one. Okay? So, if you notice that your discrete signal here is very specific. No? For example, if your reference here is 0, and this one here is 25 volts, then automatically you can see that the value from this reference point up to this point here is 25 volts, no? So, automatic nga ma-read na nimo ang 25 volts. Unlike the signal here will vary first until such time that the 25 volts is attained. Now, the voltage here, if you have several number of sine waves here, the value of your voltage here, once measured, will be approximated only, no? So dili siya itawag na to nga accurate kaayo. So approximation lang atong buhaton. Unlike in your digital signal, very specific siya. When you say 25 volts gina siya ang imong mabasa. Okay? Just like in your clock, no? You have an analog clock and you have a digital clock. So, in an analog clock, you have, for example, you want to read a particular time, no? So the second hand in your clock will be revolving, no? And it keeps on changing the value of the time. Whereas in your digital clock, you can easily determine the exact time because the time is already specified in the digital clock. Okay? Just like also in using, for example, an analog a multi-tester, no? So when you have an analog multi-tester, when you measure an analog signal, for example, or any signal for that matter, using an analog multi-tester, the value there is approximated, no? Dili siya exact. Whereas if you will use digital multi-tester, when you measure a particular voltage or signal, automatically the digital multi-tester will provide you with the exact measurement. Okay? So that's the difference between an analog signal and that of your digital signal. Okay? So, in layman's way of explaining the difference between the two, muna sa yun ani, no? So, let's say, nagsakay ka og bangka. Now, pag-abot sa unahan, nabuslot ang bangka. So, the water will enter into your bangka. And, imo sarad tong nabuslot. Then, you want to measure the amount of water that enters into your bangka. So, all you have to do is to find a bottle, no? 1 liter bottle. Say, 1 liter sa Coke nga bottle, empty. Then, i-measure nimo. Say, 1 liter, 2 liters, 3, 4, 5 liters. Okay? Now, the 5 liters of water that you measure is actually an approximation only. Why? Because there will still be some water that will be left in your bangka. And at the same time, the level of your 1 liter water inside your Coke will not be the same, no? Na uban nga puno kayo, na uban nga dili po kayo puno. So the 5 liter measured is actually approximation only. Whereas in digital, for example, the same situation, nagsakay ka og bangka and then somebody throws you a stone, no? So tanan nga mga bato nga mosulod sa imong bangka, maihap nimo. Okay? So you can see it by using your bare eye. So maihap nimo, and the stone that enters into your bangka is what we call digital signal. Okay? Whereas katong tubig nga nisulod sa imong bangka kaganiha, nagigamitan nimo og particular device such as katong 1 liter of Coke, that is an analog signal. So that's the difference between the two. So again, if you use an analog signal, you need to use a particular device for you to be able to measure that particular signal. Whereas in digital signal, I mean, you can easily determine the value of that signal by just looking at the device or a measuring device that you are using. Okay? So that's the difference between an analog signal and a digital signal. That is why sa karon nga time, most of the devices, or let's say electronic devices for example, are using digital signal. Okay, mas accurate. For example, your computer uses digital signal, your cell phone, no? Some of the TVs now are using digital signal because it is more accurate and mas klaro ang imuhang output. So, that's it. That's the difference between an analog signal and that of your digital signal.